Tuesday, everybody, and welcome back to the Couchside Judges. I'm Scott Fontana. Follow me on Twitter at Scott_Fontana.
And I'm Dan Urban. Follow me at the Dan Urban. Follow the podcast at Couchside Judges, and subscribe to us wherever you listen.
And do me a favor, get that 5-star review in, like now.
And we're going to talk judging in MMA, so make sure you read that scoring criteria.
If you can find it.
Good point.
Just use Google, like we've been saying, right?
Yeah.
One of these days, we're gonna get around to making it easier for our following to get the access to this. I know we will. It'll be good.
It's in play.
It's in play. I like that. Mm-hmm. I'm in play again.
That's good.
Yeah, as maybe some of you noticed, we didn't have a show come out on Monday. That was because Dan said, no, we're doing Tuesdays now from now on.
Honestly, I wouldn't have minded if we just said, I'll forget this week.
No, the reason is I was sick and my family was also sick, and it's still not quite over it. Kiddos are still working their way through it. So we pushed it back a day, give me a chance to recover, me a chance to catch some of the rounds that I wasn't able to quite watch as much as I wanted to on Saturday night. And I probably watched what Dan wished he watched because I missed some of the fights that he wished he hadn't seen, at least live.
There was no reason for me to ever see these fights.
Well, the UFC has unfortunately stopped caring about the quality of their fight night cards.
They don't care at all. Okay. They felt like they dropped like 6 levels. I had them very, very high up. After what they did to me Saturday, I dropped them like 6 levels.
What was the worst part of it? Because I know there were several elements of Saturday that you just were not satisfied with.
The worst part was the pacing. After being used to Bellator being like just firing out prelims.
Earlier in the day, yeah.
Just prelim after prelim, it seemed like they didn't even give him an entrance. It's like, just get out there right now because you're fighting in 3 minutes. And the UFC is like, now, who cares that it's like 2:30 in the morning? We'll still play this video package, and then we'll get on with the card. And it's just stupid. There was no reason to push the time back as far as they did. There was no reason that this card was what it was. I mean, I think if I got to award fight of the night would have went to Tybura and Spivak. Tybura and Ivanov. I'm sorry. That was the best fight of the night in my eyes. Other than that, it's
was it really that good? Because I mean, it lasted 2 minutes. There was that
fight of the night in relative to that card. There was
one of the it was like the fight that ended in 33 seconds. Both the names are escaping me because I didn't put that as my favorite finish. But that was fun while it lasted.
Nakamura?
Was it Nakamura?
I think it was Nakamura. Yeah,
Ryuta Nakamura maybe.
But you don't get fight of the night for 30 seconds.
No, but it was probably the most engaging. Like even throughout the course of that short fight, it was fun throughout those 30 seconds as opposed to nothing happened in 30 seconds and then the guy was out and boom.
Yeah, more of that should have happened.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why we had. I know I'm jumping ahead, but there's a reason why we had only 53% unanimous here for the judges. These were lower level guys. We hear this all the time that at the lower levels, crazier things happen and things are askew there. And that's
definitely exactly trial by fire. Yeah,
that's exactly what happened. And it's also in tune because we only had 15 rounds to score.
And the fights that you're referring to specifically are the ones as part of the Road to UFC tournaments, the finals that they had here, correct?
Yeah. They didn't even get the 30 on their gloves.
I think that was probably done in the same way. When they do the Ultimate Fighter later this year, which is now going to be coached by Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler, I suspect the same thing will happen there. They won't get the 30 on their gloves either.
Possibly. Maybe they will. I don't know. That card's going to be different, I think.
That just matches the way, you saw the trunks that they were wearing. It was not the typical, in this case, Venom style. It was the Road to UFC bland trunks. That's the same thing they would do with Tough. So I imagine it's all done in a particular branding way for a specific reason.
Yeah, I mean, they just put 4 Contender Series fights on a UFC card.
I don't necessarily disagree there.
What happened. So
this certainly seems,
and I love the Contender Series, but it's its own entity. It's not it doesn't go on a fight night.
And we don't take the time to go over the scores from those unless there's some sort of crazy uproar. Then yeah, we'll take anything. Like if someone says, "Hey, there's a really weird round you guys ought to look at," we're open to submissions and suggestions, and if we can get to it in time for the recording of the show, we'll look at anything. We're not necessarily snobs in that respect. It's just we don't take the time to watch every single round every single week. Who could?
It's a lot. But I always try to compare it, and I struggle with the not getting to this point. Like, I feel the UFC should be the the MLB, if you would use baseball as an analogy, and then Bellator would be AAA, and then PFL maybe AA. But that's not how it works in fighting. And UFC is just trying to get as many contenders as they can from all over the world who potentially may turn into something. It's just they're throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. Basically.
I mean, they're also
So-
they're really just trying to make sure that they can reach into untapped markets for them. So now they have one of the winners is from India, of course, Anshul Jubli. That's another entry point for them to try and spread their brand. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, and I'm not here for it really.
I'm not here for it either. I'm not really like defending it. I'm just kind of I get how it works and I'm explaining it, and I know you understand that that's pretty much it too. So
I know, it's so annoying.
it is annoying. I don't disagree.
But you know what? This wouldn't have been terrible if they just started the card at 8:00.
Yeah.
Like, there was no reason to push it back as far as they did.
Yeah, it seems to me that probably you would have been less frustrated with this whole process if this was 4:00 prelim start or 7:00 prelim start even.
No, I wouldn't have been. But also, then the main event we got, Derek Lewis looked terrible. Like, absolutely terrible. Like, not even to the point where you can be like, Spivak looked really good. It was like, I think it was just Derek Lewis looking really, really bad.
I do think there's at least an element to the fact that Spivak attacked the keeping him down in a specific way that I thought was pretty smart. Like a lot of times when Lewis just does that, like hulking up, get back up kind of thing, he does that has no technique, and he just somehow manages to do it. It's one of those things the guys just kind of let go. And I think now someone like Spivak is prepared for it. He's also uniquely qualified to handle it too, where, okay, he's getting back up. I'm just going to make sure I stay on him and push him right back down, get a mat return.
That mat return looked crazy.
It was really like,
it was
you have
so
to give him the
awkward.
props for that though. He did a good job. I think strategically he did a real great job.
Sure. Good
But
win.
yeah,
Good
I
win for
understand.
him.
It's not,
Good
Lewis
win for
did
him.
not look good either. I think it's both ways there.
All right. Enough on this. We got to talk more about it a little later.
Yeah, I'd rather talk about Bellator, to be honest. I
Yeah.
know you wanted to lead with that because that was a frustrating part for you, but I thought at least Bellator had, I don't know what the ratings are as per what they wanted out of the experience.
I
From
heard
being back on CBS, but at least I thought it was a good card, and I thought it played out well, at least the CBS portion.
I thought I read somewhere, someone posted all the numbers for CBS aired cards. I think this was the lowest rated one.
Well, I saw
900.
Luke had posted, Luke Thomas, but yeah, it was 900, but that's not a complete rating. That was the overnight.
I thought that was the
that's
average.
a number that would grow. But maybe I forget exactly. It was a number that was meant to grow, though.
Okay.
Was part of the point there.
If
I
it's
think it was only because it only factored in between 9 and 11 o'clock, and if I recall, Fedor didn't hit the cage till after 11.
So, Scott, I went back on CBS to get some notes for the rounds we're going to talk about from Bellator.
Okay.
CBS is doing them no help. Between
Yeah.
between every round, there is a 240-second ad between every round. That's a whole other round.
An unskippable ad.
Unskippable ad for 240 seconds on CBS. On
Holy moly!
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Holy guacamole to give your
yes,
food
there
food.
you go. Oh, that's a good one. I should have.
You don't use that one. I think you should. You should incorporate that.
I like that. It's usually I stick with the Italian foods, but I'm gonna incorporate guacamole.
Yeah. Go the Mexican route, man.
It is probably one of my favorite cuisines.
Mexican or just
Yeah.
straight up guac?
No, Mexican.
Okay.
Well, like that does it for my food. What
No,
else?
no. We're going to extend this. The show is actually going to be about that now.
Oh, that's right. You haven't eaten in a couple days, so you're quite hungry.
I mean,
Right.
I'm eating. I'm eating okay,
Okay.
now. It was for a while I wasn't. I think Friday I had goodness, what I have, like a piece of toast or something. I don't remember. No, I had half of a turkey and cheese sandwich, and that was the food that I consumed
Okay.
because I mostly slept,
Mm.
and I'd mostly been too worried that I was going to everything would find its way back to its original source. And,
Mm.
yeah, so I did a lot of I drank a lot of Gatorade and a lot of kind of Pedialyte-ish type stuff. That was like
Yeah, you
you
gotta stay
kind of
hydrated.
dump the the little powder into the water and it turns it sort of into like an electrolyte drink.
Oh yeah, like those the hydration things, like the post hangover recovery type stuff.
We got them at the wedding I was at when we missed the last pay-per-view of last year. Was it 282? Is that the number it was?
Maybe. Yeah, it had to be 282
The one with Patty Pimblett and Jared Gordon.
or
Yeah,
281.
that was part of the like the
Okay.
care package if you stayed in the hotel, and it
Uh,
was, we actually got to stay in my father-in-law's room because he wasn't going to use it.
oh, nice.
That was nice.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. We're kind of off beat here. Let's get back to Bellator. Let's get back to again. I nonetheless, whatever the ratings were, I think it was at least a successful aesthetically. And in terms of what the fights were going to deliver. And look, no one was going in there being like, "Yeah, Fedor's got this." I think there was a lot of like, "Hey, maybe." But ultimately, we kind of got what we were expecting out of Fedor, at least.
Well,
But
yeah. I
other
mean,
than that, it's still, I think, a successful event.
I came around on it just because it was Fedor's finale. But when it
Mm.
was first announced, I was like, why? Why is this happening? And then as time went on, I kind of got on board with it.
Well, you
But
understand why it happened, right?
yeah, so
Because the guy like wouldn't take any other fight. All the fights we wanted, if you had asked me, like, give me 3 guys that would be good options for his last fight, something fun, memorable, great way to go out. Anderson Silva, and this is in no order. Anderson Silva, Junior Dos Santos, and Alistair Overeem.
perfect.
And he had no interest in any of them when I asked him about this. He said no, they were fired from the UFC for their losses.
Okay,
So he's like, "Nah, I don't want that."
awesome. All right.
It's That's how he rolls, man. He wanted to go out against someone who was at least winning. He wanted to test himself. I
Okay.
respect that,
Yeah, sure. Either way,
but, yeah, didn't go well.
it was cool to see everyone in the cage, though.
That was cool. I thought that was a nice moment, and say what you want about Scott Coker, maybe he's not the most high energy promoter there is, and, they've gone to the well of the older fighter probably a little too often to the point where it kind of built their brand that way for quite a while. I think they're slowly moving away from that, but at the very least, he kind of respects the history of not just martial arts, but this sport in particular, and I think this was proof of that. It didn't really gain a whole lot other than like maybe some fun memories, and maybe people are just like, "Oh, nice job, Bellator," you
Yeah.
know.
Oh, yeah, it
But
was
he did
cool.
it.
Yeah, well, he had everyone in the ring, right? He had
Bunch of people, yeah. I mean, it was almost everybody who like is persona non grata with the UFC now. So it was like Frank Shamrock, Josh Barnett, Matt Hughes. I think Matt Hughes is still very welcome in that circle. Randy Couture,
yeah, Chuck was there.
Chuck Liddell. Wait, Chuck was there?
And yeah, Chuck was in the ring.
Why didn't I see him in there?
He had his mohawk still. I believe it was Hoist and Henzo were in there as well.
They were, both of them. Yeah, in one of the photos, Henzo was, kneeling, and someone pointed out, they're like, "Why is he kneeling?" I'm like, "Well, he's gotta practice knee on belly wherever he can.
That's true.
You gotta
That's
sharpen your tools."
that's true. Also,
Mhm.
Dan Henderson was there.
Yes,
So
yeah, I was gonna say Hendo as
yeah,
well. So,
so
yeah, not everyone is, like, totally unwelcome in the UFC, but, like, that's kinda the first ones, and Chael. Don't forget Chael.
Chael was. I didn't notice Chael there.
Oh, Chael was there,
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't
Because
notice.
the list was like, it was like former champion, former champion, former champion, former champion, former champion, and Chael.
Almost champion Chael.
Hey, honestly, it's hard not to think of him as like kind of the last best guy in the WEC middleweight division because it was supposed to be a title fight rematch against Paulo Filho. I don't know if you know this, Dan. I don't know how much you remember this, but he was supposed to have a title fight rematch against Paulo Filho, having lost the first one. And Filho missed weight,
Mm,
but then Chael goes out there and wins a 3-round decision in a fight that very likely he would have won rounds 4 and 5 too.
okay.
So it's hard for me to say there, like the guy wasn't really some form of a champion at some point. He just never actually got to be.
So that's weird. So because Philo missed weight, the belt wasn't on the line.
Correct. He was it was stripped of it, I guess. They just made it a non-title fight.
Oh, that is so weird. It's usually
I
the
don't
other
know if
way
they stripped
around.
I mean I think they did strip him because they were ending the
Ah,
division and it was going that was the last like middleweight fight in WEC
gotcha.
history. So
I
they were
gotcha.
just moving it over.
All right.
But yeah, we're now talking about WEC instead of Bellator. We want to do everything but talk about Bellator, I think. You were talking though about pacing. I wanted to ask you this because I did not watch the prelims live. I went back and watched a couple for the purposes of the show, but I was informed that there was like a half hour gap. Like they ended the
Yeah.
prelims at like half an hour before the CBS card started, and they just made all the 4 remaining fights into post limbs. But they could have gotten one in theory.
It would have
What
been
was your take on that? I know you don't like post limbs.
yeah, postlims are stupid. They should just have account. I mean, I loved how they paced this show, but if they just started 2 hours earlier, there would Fedor would have been the main event, final attraction. Nothing else after that.
At least part of the pacing is too, yeah, and you got to give credit to this, or at least understand this as a part of it. Most of these fights went to a decision. There were so many of these fights, and so many fights in general. So, like, yeah, they had to keep moving, otherwise they would have had like 6 post limbs.
But that's the thing. I think Bellator takes into account that the prelims usually have a bunch of finishes. The way they book them
Often do,
and it didn't happen this time. And they're like, oh no, now we're gonna have 4 post limbs. Whereas the UFC, they account for every fight to go to a decision. Everything, the next fight you will notice usually, unless they start having to rush things for whatever reason, it's like almost like on the 15 or in the 45, like almost like perfect. And that's what got annoyed. That's why I got annoyed with the later fights at the UFC. But
here's what I want to ask you something too. Like if the UFC were to do this, because I had this thought based on what what Bellator did here. What if, because we know that they're going to start X prelims at X time, right? So we know they're always going to do the early prelims are, let's say for a pay-per-view, the early prelims are 6:30. Then we know that the regular prelims are going to be, which is stupid that they separate them, but nonetheless, 8 o'clock is when the next set of prelims start, and then the pay-per-view starts at 10. What if they just had the fights back to back to back to back, and then they said, okay, we're going to give you a 15, 20-minute break here. We know that you're going to come back at 8 o'clock, like the time.
yeah,
Would you like that pacing?
Yeah, I wish they would tell us the exact time the fight's going to start.
Exactly. That's what I'm getting at. At least you get you can have that time in place, Or like if it was a fight night where they don't have the early prelims, it's just prelims, the main card, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they had, all the fights were going super quick, right? And they said, okay, let's just take an hour break. I know that's good, especially if they're traveling, that can be tough. But if in the Apex,
Yeah,
there's not that many people there. Probably gives people a chance to look around a little bit. No one's going to be booing in the Apex. Like there's only like 30 people there.
I wonder if they have concessions.
I'm sure they have some form of way to get a lot of money out of you for food and beverage. Yeah. I would be curious how much it costs.
Yeah, interesting.
I'm sure somebody who goes to the Apex frequently would be able to tell us.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. You know what? You can usually, if you go on the sports book and you just scroll to see the fights, it usually tells you what time it's closing before you can, stop betting on it.
Sure. No, that's
true. What I used to do that when I bet on fights, but haven't really done that anymore. But I noticed they know when the next fight's going to start, or at least
right,
the very vicinity of it. So.
All right, but anyway, to steer it back to, I know I'm taking us off topic a lot too. One more thing I wanted to ask you about Bellator itself, Johnny Eblen, because I don't remember if you got to watch his fight against Gegard Mousasi, or if you had even watched any of his previous fights. But well, first off, had you watched those?
No.
Okay, so this is your first time watching Johnny Eblen.
I think you had me watch him fight Mousasi.
Okay, so that was a 50-45, so I don't think I would have made you do it for our show.
I don't know. I think you told me to watch him.
Maybe I did. I don't know if you did or not. But what are your thoughts on Johnny Eblen now that he's 2 fights into his championship run?
He looks good. I mean, and since middleweight is very top heavy, I don't think it's crazy to put him in the top 5 of the whole sport.
It's probably fair.
So.
Because you gotta respect Gegard Mousasi. Like I know he's not always the most fun, but like he had accomplished enough that his standing in the sport was at a certain level. So for him to beat him and then to go out there and also put on an excellent fight as he did against Anatoly Tokov, I think that at least solidified. Okay, he's not just a flash in the pan. He's going places. He looked really good. Like the talent's there. You can tell.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's not like if he fought Pereira, I'd be like, Pereira's going to wipe the floor with him. I kind of think the opposite a little bit. I think Eblen
I'd be interested to see, because he's got the wrestling.
So, and I think he'd have it'd be a fun fight with him versus Adesanya too.
Sure. Any of those fights, really. That German suplex was fun.
He should do more of that.
And he did in the 5th round too. Like this isn't the type of thing you expect in the 5th round.
I saw someone say he's done that back-to-back 5th rounds.
Is that right? I don't remember
maybe I
that
didn't see his last fight.
I don't remember that distinctly in the
Okay.
Mousasi fight. I'm not saying it didn't happen.
Okay.
I'm also coming out of an illness over the weekend, so forgive my memory. But but yeah, he impressed me. He kept his streak going. He's never lost a round because well, the 2 rounds that we're going to talk about from Bellator's main card, we didn't do the prelims or the post limbs for these, but I guess even before we get to those 2 rounds, I should say, let's do the quick round breakdown,
Yeah.
which we like to do. I think we don't always remember to. I think I'm trying to get better at this year. That's part of my New Year's resolution. Hopefully, you'll keep me honest with that as well, my friend. But in Bellator, we'll lead with them. They had 34 scored rounds, which is way more than we ever talk about.
Yeah, they had 14 fights.
They had
But
14
let me
fights.
point this out. They had 14 fights and they hired 11 judges. I think that's the way to do it. Not like we did it last week where we only had 6 judges.
Mhm.
California had 11 judges and 5 different referees. Nobody was really overworked there.
It was a good job.
They spread it out nicely. They got all the up and comers like or that wouldn't be doing the main events like Lieben. They got their work in, and then you had the traveling guys take over kind of later in the night for the bigger fights, and it was solid.
I mean, California is I guess, I don't know if this is the right terminology, but I'll use it anyway, a prestige commission. It's
Mhm.
definitely like a destination commission because they put on so many fights. They attract big fights. And obviously Andy Foster is probably the best commissioner in the country
Yeah, it
and
was.
by consequence pretty much the world.
Yeah, it was good.
But yeah, so 34 rounds. I don't know the exact scores of one of the post limb fights because Bellator neglected to share it. Still tracking that down. I can probably get it from California, get it officially. But outside of the 3 potential rounds that could be split somewhere, it was unanimous 29-28 in Yusuf Karakaya versus Ethan Hughes, by the way. So it might be no splits, it might be several splits. You never know. But Bellator, 28 out of 34 is the maximum of their unanimous rounds.
Hmm.
That's 82.4%. If they were all aligned on that fight, 82.4%, 28 out of 34. That's a really good job. Really good teamwork there. Getting on the same page, scoring the fights the same way.
That was solid.
It's really good. Less so in the UFC, but that doesn't necessarily mean the quality of judging was poorer. I think it speaks to what you were talking about earlier, which is the lower quality of the talent level relative to what you'd expect from the UFC. So we had 8 out of 15 unanimous rounds,
Yeah, slightly above 50%.
53 and a third
Yeah.
percent. So let's get over to the Bellator contested rounds. We've got 2 of them, like I said, both in Johnny Eblin's fight, round 1 and round 2. Start with round 1.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
kind of a slow round, very close. I think Tokov lands 3 solid strikes to the head in the round. The rest of the round is Eblin landed leg kicks, a couple punches to the head, I think an elbow. In the clinch, they're exchanging knees. I think Tokov's probably getting the better of the knees here, just slightly. Really close round, but I land on Eblin 10-9.
I thought it was close, but honestly, I felt pretty good with my Eblin score here. I don't even think I would say close, but clear. It was just like, you know what? It was close, but I arrived at a score that I feel very good about
Okay,
in Eblin.
fair.
Yeah. I was actually surprised how many people online did have Tokov here. But having seen that, I get it, and the fact that Judge Elliot Kelly was on the Tokov side there makes sense. Ron McCarthy and Chris Crail saw it our way, though.
Mm.
And then round 2, sir.
Yeah, Tokov is finding his range, and he's landing pretty good in this round. Eblin's eye is starting to swell up. It's got a little blood around it. Eblin is swinging wild and missing. He is landing some good leg kicks, though. As the round goes on, Eblin does, start landing a couple upstairs. But I think Tokov's getting the better of it. And like I mentioned, Eblin's eye is looking, decently messed up, or at least getting to that point. But then Eblin drops Tokov with an elbow, takes him down, lands some ground and pound, a couple knees against the fence. I went Eblin 10-9, but rewatching this for the notes,
Mhm.
I was like, man, maybe he got this wrong. I'm not sure. But then
I don't think you got it wrong. I would say, because I gave serious, serious, serious thought. I was so torn on this to going Tokov here. And I was almost wondering, I'm like, man, did I just knee-jerk reaction to it to go Eblin here? And I don't think so. I actually feel confident that it's totally a defensible score, first off, to
Well,
give
yeah, I
this
agree
one to
there.
Eblin. And that's why I don't think you got it wrong. I don't think there's a wrong answer here. because, yeah, I mean, the question is how much do you give credence to that end of the round when I thought Tokov was winning quite well up until that point, although not a total shutout.
Hmm.
So it's always tricky when you get to a round like this where, it can be defended one way or the other. But nonetheless, I ended up on Eblin as well. So did you. So did judges Chris Crail and Elliot Kelly. And then Ron McCarthy was the one who saw this from Tokov. Again, super, super defensible score here.
Yeah, for sure. It was tight. So,
But again, those are 2 rounds where Eblin was the majority score. So even though it was 49-46 twice plus the 50-45, Eblin still has that streak of winning every round of his career.
it's intact.
It is impressive. You gotta hand it to him. And that was it for Bellator once again. And there was one of the fights that ended, I believe it was on the post limbs, was one of those alternative decisions that we like to
Oh, we had
talk about.
another one of
We
those?
talked about last time. Yeah, there was, but we're not going to talk about it. It's just a little too much with everything going on. The fact that I was getting over things and still taking care of my kids and everything, it just didn't have time. So.
Also, honestly, I 100% expected us to talk about Brennan Ward and Sabah Hamasi. I 100% expected to
You
talk about
figured that
round
would be
one.
a fight we would talk about. You're saying,
Yeah, I think me and you both scored it round 1 for Ward,
Mhm.
but
And it was a Hamasi
all
round.
3 were unanimous for Hamasi.
Yeah,
So
I was a little surprised too. Hey, it is what it is. I'm willing to, defer to the judges in that case. I
Yeah.
don't think it's one that we need to really break down and be
Yeah.
like, yeah, but it's like, you know what? They had it.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. And I don't think we got it wrong. I still think I have a score that I can defend. But if that's what they
I
had, that's what
agree.
they
Yeah,
had.
for sure.
Yeah. So, and hey, if I'm wrong, if you judge that fight and you want to reach out and be like, listen, boy, you don't know what you're talking about. That's fine. I was sick. I have an excuse. I got a crutch built in. You've got no excuse.
That was a bloody, bloody fight.
That was a really bloody fight. Welcome back to Network TV.
Yeah. Good start.
I liked it. I liked it. Did you see the you saw the tweet I did, right? The fake Morrow quote.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
he said something crazy too, and I was like, I almost responded with that quote because I thought your quote was real at first.
Oh yeah, no. I mean,
But it
I
wasn't.
made it clear, as you
Yeah,
know, I
yeah.
did make it clear that was not real. But
Yeah.
I just should I find it? Yeah, I can find it. I actually got it right here. You want me to do it?
Yeah.
And on the network that brought you the Big Bang Theory, Brennan Ward delivered a big bang to the head of Saba Homasi.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good Moro there.
That was a good moral.
Yeah,
Thank
it
you.
was
I
pretty
never
good.
tried it. I
It
never
was
tried
pretty
it.
good.
I don't know if that'll come out. It'd probably just be a bunch of loud noises that you're gonna have to figure out in post. But totally believable once again, right?
Yeah.
All right, that was it for Bellator, though. Or at least for the main card. We're going to shift over to the UFC. We'll start with a fight that I think you would agree is absolutely UFC caliber.
Oh yeah, these guys are up there.
Duo Choi. This was on the main card. Duo Choi making his return to the UFC against Kyle Nelson. Well, nobody won. Majority draw. 28 all twice and a 29-27. Round 2 was our split round, and we'll get to a little bit after that why we're talking about this as a majority draw. But first off, round 2, why are we talking about this as a split round at all?
Well, Nelson's having himself a pretty good first half of the round. You know, he lands
very early.
Yeah, he lands a nice right that stumbles Choi back to the fence. Lands a couple other good strikes, but Choi's also firing back. He's landing some decent ones of his own. He lands a nice elbow. And his leg kicks, he just kept chopping down the leg a little bit. At the halfway mark is where Nelson is visibly slower, maybe, probably gassing a little bit. And Choi just continues to punish the leg. Lands some good shots on the ground. In that last half, Nelson does get through on 3 pretty good shots, including a leg kick that spins Choi all the way around. So maybe if you were kind of close on there, and then he lands these shots, I could see, okay, you pushed it back over in his favor. I think Choi was just better overall in this one, so I went 10-9 Choi.
Listen, I've not trained striking, so I'm going to ask you kind of maybe a noobish question on striking, because at least you've done a little bit of that. When Choi takes the leg kick and allows it to spin him around, I look at that and say, well, that's probably less damaging than the ones he's landed because he's not planted. He's allowing his leg to move a little more with the momentum. No?
I suppose. I mean, I was never one. Anytime I sparred, I would always hear, Dan, you better start checking those.
Sure.
Dan, you better start checking those. And then 3 more later, it's like, I probably should have started checking those.
Well, how many times were you spinning around?
I was always heavy on the front foot, so I was never spinning. So it probably hurt more. You're probably right. so I don't really have any experience, getting spun
Okay.
around like that.
Yeah, anyone with striking experience, enlighten me because again, I don't have that. I've just broken my cheekbone a couple times being punched, so that's not really striking experience. That's just being damaged experience. It's not the same.
10-7 damage.
Yeah, and that's to my face. My legs have been pretty good.
Yeah.
But so that's why when I looked at like a strike like that, and I'm like, I don't think that looks as damaging, at least in my interpretation of it, especially to the continued amount of those leg strikes that are being landed like thudding and just like to a planted leg, the
Mm,
way Choi is throwing them. I graded those pretty high in this round.
okay.
So that was more or less why I ended up going to Choi there. Again, I think probably the highest spot belonged to Nelson,
Mm-hmm.
but there weren't enough of them, and I didn't think it was that high to overcome what I thought were some really damaging leg strikes. That's what they looked like to me.
All right.
Sound fair?
Sounds good.
All right. So what does that mean for Judge Adelaide Bird?
She gets a couch side override.
Meow, 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 meow.
I think that's the first one of the year.
First one of the whole year?
Yeah,
Get out of here.
I think so. I'm not really sure.
I thought we did. I thought we did one in one of the first two UFCs. No, maybe.
I don't know.
Well, either way, we didn't side with judges Eric Colon and Chris Lee. Maybe because again, I have a lesser understanding of the way you'd absorb that leg strike. Maybe that strike, even in general, means more than I'm giving it credit for, and probably someone like judges Colon and Lee, who are very veteran, would have a better understanding of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they would. They just will. But
Yeah.
maybe that is something that weighs heavily for them. I guess what I really
Okay.
I
I mean, it's
they
not a
definitely
good visual
they definitely
getting
know better.
spun around.
What's that? No, it's not a good visual, but
Yeah.
I feel like again, it just isn't. It doesn't look like something. It looks like you're allowing your leg to move away, which isn't like keeping all of the
Yeah, it's
impact
going with
in
it.
one spot. It's allowing it to dissipate. I would think a
Yeah,
little bit. You know,
probably.
that's why I look at it like that. I'm like, maybe it's not so bad. So
Mm.
maybe I'm wrong. What do I know? Don't kick me in the legs. But there was another reason we did want to talk about this fight in particular, and it was in the next round.
Yeah,
And this is why we have a majority draw.
this is first.
There was a clash of heads. Everyone jumps to saying headbutt, and totally am guilty of doing it for years and years and years. I probably still do it from time to time, but I'm trying to wean myself off the idea of saying headbutt every time. A headbutt's when you're saying, "Man, I'm gonna try and hit him with my head here. Let's see how that goes."
I kind of think this was a headbutt.
You think so?
I think how can you penalize Sky for a clash of heads? It's not a foul to accidentally clash heads.
It's damaging.
It is, but it's not a foul to accidentally clash heads with someone. It is when you go forcefully with your head forward, even if it's not on purpose.
But it's
that's
still
a headbutt.
it's an illegal strike because you're using your head as the strike.
Yeah, so that's a headbutt though.
I guess. I mean,
I think
but I don't think that's what he was. I think what he was trying to do was something with like pull his head up, pull Nelson's head up. Choi was. This was Duho Choi who's committing the foul, by the way. It looked to me like he was kind of pulling the head up and he was trying to move his body down at the same time, and he just missed where his head should be.
right.
So,
Like
I mean,
yeah,
call it what you want. I guess it doesn't really matter if you call it clash of heads or headbutt. It's still not legal what he did because he caused damage with his head. So,
right.
yeah, what we're getting at here is that referee Chris Tognoni decided to take away a point for this, and this caused a stir, as these things often do, right?
Yeah, I got no issue with the point deduction.
I don't either.
Originally, when I said, "Oh wow, they took that point for that," because I thought it looked like Nelson initiated him coming down, so it's like it would be incidental. But then I saw on the replay, Choi's the one going down. So
sure, it did seem though that the point a lot of people were making is like, well, come on, why aren't we taking a point for that up kick to the grounded opponent in round 2 of the next fight we're going to talk about, which is Jung Young Lee versus Ija.
yeah, so you got that's a whole different story.
It is. We can get into the details of it there, but just the fact that this happened earlier in the night, now we have this head clash later in the night, and there's a point taken here, but there was no point taken earlier. Different referee in that case. Mark Smith, right, was on the other one.
Yeah. So
yeah. Do you want to just set it up here? Should we just say what happened there exactly so we can kind of get this out of the way?
Yeah. So Lee is on top, right? Who's on top here?
I
got it here. So what round was that in?
That was round 2.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, Lee is on the bottom, so E is on top.
That sounds right.
Lee kicks him in the face. Mark Smith stops it, rightfully so. Stands them up, has them go to their corners. Was gonna have E checked out by the doctor, but E said, "No, I'm fine. We're good." And then they're like, "All right, fight on," and they just start fight standing.
But it was a situation, it was kind of one of those, not exactly the same, but it was similar to the time when Anderson Silva lands the up kick on Yushin Okami way back, when Okami's on his knees in the guard and somehow gets up kicked.
Mm-hmm.
It was similar to that kind of scenario where the guy's on the ground and he eats the up kick. It's a
Yeah,
weird thing. I still feel like that strike should be legal, actually.
maybe one day it will be.
I mean, the guy can dream, but but yeah, I think the question is like, why are we enforcing it here and we're not enforcing it there? And there is a lot of inconsistency with the enforcement of damaging fouls. And it does seem like referee Chris Tognoni is more likely observationally to give or to deduct a point in these situations than a lot of other referees. Do you think that's fair, or is that something you've observed as
Mm,
well?
possibly. I mean, it could
I'm
stem
not saying
from
he does it all the time, but like it seems to be happening more frequently
it.
from him than others.
Here, sometimes I always think I always think, should we take into account bout order where we see a little inconsistencies in like some of the scoring, like, oh, why wasn't this round earlier at 10-8, but this round later on was at 10-8? Like,
Certainly could have something to do with it. You never know.
is there calibration mid event? Like,
They
guys,
shouldn't. I mean, I think
what's
with a
going
foul
on
like that, I
here?
feel like they shouldn't, but
So
you never know.
like, so maybe they say, hey, we probably should have taken a point from that. So maybe that plays into something later. Who knows?
You hear
Uh,
a lot from officials that they don't want to inject themselves into the outcome of the fight,
yeah,
right?
right.
So like they're loath to take the point because they don't want to be the ones who cause the fight to go one or the other. It's like, but at the same time, inaction in this sense is an action in and of itself. So if you decide not to take a point, you're also, especially if it did end up to some degree, and inarguably these to some degree do cause some damage, it changes the fight
Well, this
without penalty for the person who committed the foul.
Well, the fight between Lee and E changed the fight in Lee's favor.
Mhm.
This wasn't the craziest up kick. It was kind of just
No, it wasn't. It wasn't that bad. It's not one that looked like it truly did need to be a point taken here. Like I'm not even like up in arms about it, but I
right.
think that's something that people were irked by.
I think more people are upset that the fight started standing.
Okay.
E worked to get it down on the ground, gets kicked in the face, and now he has to restart back on the feet.
I mean, we can get the details of that,
So
I guess, later, but I don't want to go too far away from the whole point of the Duho Choi clash of heads. But I don't know. I think you and I at least both agree that yeah, the point deduction here seemed justified. It was
point's
fine.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Bis-
unfortunate because
Bisping loved that a point was taken.
he really did.
He,
Yeah, he's all about that, and I thought Laura Sanko did a really good job of explaining the rule behind it as well because
yeah.
she's very good with the rules and the criteria and all these things. I thought I thought about this while I was watching. I think it might have been this fight in particular. This is like team criteria because you have John Gooden who, and this is no slight to John Anik here, but Gooden seems to be even more in tune with the way they utilize the criteria.
Yeah, good.
It's something that him and Dan Hardy talked about a lot. They've obviously done the homework, so that was really good. You bring in Laura Sanko for her first time calling an actual official UFC event here, and she already passed the judging test. Passed courses. She absolutely knows what she's talking about. She's as close to an authority as anybody else, and she's also fought before too. And then you have Bisping, who of all the, let's say, established commentators who are, former fighters on the UFC panel, he's the one that seems to have the best understanding of the criteria now as well.
Yeah, he's coming a long way.
So that whole team there, I feel like between them, they're the ones who are going to get the best education out there.
Probably right.
So more please is what I'm really saying. But you can sub Anik in there. I think Anik's perfectly fine in there as well. I'm sure he'd welcome the chance to not have to sit back and correct everybody for blatantly wrong and like ridiculously dumb takes on how the criteria works or doesn't.
Yeah.
Or arguing about the stupid stats when it comes to takedowns.
I did notice that they had mount time as one of the stats in one of the fights.
That's more interesting.
So I don't know if
does that only count full mount, or is that like, does it count side mount, or
no? This was strictly mount. I forget what fight it was in.
Okay,
but it was just
I assume full mount.
Yeah.
Interesting. I missed that.
So
But anyway, yeah, I don't think we have much more to say about this fight, though. It is, though, unfortunate because you and I did the couch side override. If it was up to us, and granted, close round, we would have had this fight still be a victory for Choi 29-27.
Yep.
Didn't go that way. Sorry, Charlie.
all right. What's the next one?
Yeah, next up, we are going to go back to this fight, the Lee versus the E fight, right?
Yep.
Split decision. Typical split decision, 2 29-28s and a 30-27 the other way. All 3 rounds being split. And this one is an alternate decision.
Yeah, one of those
Alternative decision.
Yep.
Excuse me. I always butcher my own language. Yeah. So I don't know. I guess we've danced around a lot of stuff. We probably have to start getting pedal to the metal here. And I know you don't love these fights anyway, so fly through these explanations as fast as you'd like. So
all right, let me
round
start.
one.
Let me start with this was truly a terrible round of MMA.
Yes, it really was.
Only slightly better than Esparza and Namajunas.
I think it. Yeah. Honestly, this round reminded me in a lot of ways, and it wasn't even as good as that, but it reminded me of the third round of Patty Pimblett and Jared Gordon.
This was very similar to that.
Very similar in the way they played out. But yeah, I think there was still a little bit more thrill in the other fight.
Yeah, really, all E did was try to take down Lee, and when he did get him there,
at the cage in particular.
Yeah, once he did bring him down briefly, he did absolutely nothing with it but hold him. I don't even think he threw a knee in the clinch until like 40 seconds left. Meanwhile, throughout, Lee is landing some punches against the cage. With like 20 seconds left, E lands a good punch, and that's it. A boring round to discuss. Who would I rather be? I'd rather be the guy who didn't get punched in the face multiple times. So I'm on 10-9 Lee.
I mean, I guess I get you. I did score this one for E anyway. I'm not really married to it. I don't want to defend it very heavily. Is that fair?
That's fine.
Can I feel that way? Like a judge wouldn't be able to do that. Like realistically, like you'd have to be able to say a lot more than that. But I didn't feel well. Give me a little pass here. But I did score it in the majority though. I scored it the same way as Jacob Montalvo, who was making his Las Vegas debut, by the way, his Nevada debut. We've seen him referee and judge in various commissions. He's based out of Texas, I believe. So welcome to Nevada there, Judge Montalvo. And he was alongside Junichiro Kamijo on this round. So, but you saw it the same way as David Lethaby, who also made his debut in Nevada.
Good for him. Good to see him on there.
Came halfway across the world for this one.
Mm-hmm.
Or like a quarter of the way. I forget how long the hours would be. I think it's like an 8-hour difference. So yeah, it's like 2/3 of the way around the world.
All right.
Something like that. Ask a geologist, or not a geologist. That's study of rocks. Geographer.
Okay.
There you go. Cartographer, even. They make maps.
Mm.
Neither here nor there. Round 2.
Yeah, at least this round had some action. As he was willing to stand a bit.
This is a decent round.
Yeah, he landed some good shots while on the feet and actually threw some elbows in the clinch. Lee landed hard shots himself, and then E gets it down, lands a nice elbow. Then Lee, hits an up kick as we spoke about. The round is paused and it resumes standing. I don't know why that was it. You would think it would restart back on the ground.
One would think.
Anyway, close round, but I see it for E. 10-9.
I had this one for Lee, actually. I went the other way. I thought he was landing the more effective strikes. It's
all right.
Pretty much where I went for it.
Fair.
Yeah.
So
we both have it tied at 19-all. This is a barn burner. I think everyone was on the edge of their seat for this fight.
Totally.
Yeah, especially if you had action on it or something. Probably the only way you'd be. Or if you maybe you were related to them. But
I got
round 3.
I gotta start making sure I'm on the follow tab on Twitter. Because I'm always I always end up on the For You somehow.
Oh, it's because they want you to go back to that very quickly.
And
blame Elon.
MMA gambling Twitter is just a nightmare.
It's a toxic hellscape.
It's like, wait, I don't want to see this. You guys have no idea what you're talking about at all.
It's really just a bunch of people being babies about losing money.
It's like they never take into account their own bias that they had money on this fight. That's why they're seeing it through this lens.
What's great is that like no matter which way the fight ends, some segment of them is going to be super mad and think that they were screwed.
Yeah, always.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
1-800-GAMBLER, my friends. If you
well,
need
they
help.
win though. They win. So
I'm just saying it's a good resource for people.
They're good at what they do. It's just when they lose, they can't handle it.
Some of them are good at what they do.
I get you. Okay, yes. Otherwise, Vegas would be out of business. I get you.
Yeah. No. And this isn't me trying to crap all over all of the people who do, betting and that kind of thing and gambling and that kind of thing. And especially the people who write stuff, I think at least are a little more sensible typically.
Okay.
First off, I know some of them,
Yeah.
So, people like Dan Stupp, who I have a very high opinion of. Eric Richter, my colleague at the New York Post.
Eric was
Dan Tom,
awesome.
of course.
Eric was absolutely awesome on Saturday night. He was
Is that right?
He was shutting everyone down left and right when
Yeah?
they were trying to talk about judging, and I applaud him because
That's my guy.
he was fantastic with that.
That's my guy. He
And
listens
yes,
to our show sometimes. Hi,
Dan
Eric.
Tom is a good guy too.
He sure is. Action Network now. He's with the Action Network. We do some
Yeah.
stuff with them in the New York Post. Yeah,
That's awesome.
Maybe Dan Tom will end up in the pages of the New York Post one day. You never know.
That'd be pretty cool.
That would be pretty cool. If it does, I'll have to save the paper. But that's neither here nor there. We're not a gambling show, sir.
I know.
We're a judging show. Let's get to round 3.
There's another rant I had.
I know. We're getting sidetracked left and right on this one.
Yeah. All right, round 3. This was a close round. Lee landed pretty heavy on the feet. E landed a couple shots, but he's mostly using a Sabatello approach of wrestling and doing nothing but hold on. Once in a while, he'll throw a punch. But Lee didn't have all that much offense, so it's kind of close. Whatever. Thankfully, it's over. 10-9 Lee.
Yeah, that's all. That's all I'm gonna say.
But
you know what?
that's all, folks.
I didn't actually say the judging splits on round 2, and I'll do that for round 3 as well. But round 2, it was judges Leatherby and Montalvo who saw it for E the same way as you. I stood firm with Judge Camijo and gave that one to Lee. Round 3, though, it was judges Leatherby and Camijo who saw it for Lee, as both you and I did, and Judge Montalvo was on his own here. I didn't think this was a bad score, but I did feel much better about Lee here. Did you agree?
I agree. I think, Lee was doing more of the effective offense, I would say.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think you have an argument for E, too, because it's low output both ways.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
Anytime you're in a low out, like I'm really not going to be. It's going to be hard for me to say close but clear in a low output round because there's just not enough happening. So how clear could it really be?
Mm-hmm.
It can be, but I don't think we really got there here. So yeah, defensible score from Montalvo. I just went the other way, and so I ended up with the exact same scorecard as Judge Camijo, and I felt like I was in pretty good company there.
Yeah, I was with David Leatherby.
You did, and it ended up being that every judge on this fight was the out judge.
At one point, yeah.
That'll happen once in a while. There are all different split decisions are funny. There's like different types of them, right? So there's like the one where it's like, oh, just one round decided the whole thing. And then there's the one that's like, oh, we have, all the judges were all over the map. Everybody had something different in one round or another, right? And then we have like alternative decisions, which plays out here as well.
Like I would much rather have
all different types.
3 split rounds in an action-packed fight. Like the discussing winners in fights where almost nothing's happening. It's like, this is just boring.
No, I don't blame you. And thus we soldier on because, hey, we got the chance to talk about 2 of the first rounds in Nevada by 2 of the newest judges in Nevada.
Yeah, that was cool.
Moving on, though, to another fight that you probably wish had not occurred on this card. Hyun-Sung Park got the win over Seung-Guk Choi via round 3 submission, rear naked choke. Round 1 and 2 both split here. So let's start with 1.
Well, let me start with another.
Yeah. What do you want?
This upset me. They're saying, "Oh, this guy Park is a finisher," and I didn't see that for the first 2 rounds. I was like, "Come on, what are we doing here?"
Well, yeah, but then
are you guys lying to me? I didn't watch Road to UFC. Are you sure he's a finisher? Because he's not fighting like that. And he did eventually, but I wish it happened sooner because it was late. It was getting late. Anyway, round 1. Almost 2 full minutes of half-hearted leg kicks and feints. Then Park kicks the legs, gets it caught, eats a right that sits him down, and then they stare at each other while kicking each other's legs a little bit. Back on the feet, they resume the feint competition. When they do engage, I think Choi's landing a bit better. Park's landing some good leg kicks. I favor Choi, 10-9.
I went the other way. I went for Park here.
Okay.
Yeah. Saw the same way as Chris Lee and Rick Winter. But you were on the same page as Judge Eric Cologne.
Yep.
North Jersey. Round 2.
Round 2, decent round. They do stare at each other for a little bit, but Park lands a good one to the head. Good low kicks. Choi lands some shots, especially on top on the ground. He lands a pretty good elbow there. But on the whole, I think Park round 10-9.
Yeah, me too. This time I did side with South Jersey.
You sided with the communist?
The communists in
Yeah.
South Jersey. That's right. Eric Colon and Rick Winter. It was Chris Lee who was on his own, saw this one for Choi. But their scores didn't matter because, once again, Hyun-Sung Park is a finisher.
He finished it, thank God. I mean,
He
but
did what he was supposed to do. He just
you-
did it later than you wanted.
well, they also stared at each other 2 full minutes the first round. I was like,
I'm not saying they didn't
you
do that.
are-
That's true. That was a
you-
terrible first round.
you are lying, commentary team. Tell me he's a finisher.
Hey, Anderson Silva's a finisher. What'd he do for the first round in a lot of fights? Just stared.
But it was always, what's he gonna do?
Well,
He's gonna
sure.
do something.
But he'd earned
just
that
knew it
rep
was
because
coming.
you'd watched him. Maybe if you'd watched the journey of Hyun-Sung Park, you also would have been like, oh man, what's he gonna do? I can't wait.
That remains to be seen.
It's it can't be seen because you haven't watched that journey.
Yeah.
And you probably aren't going to.
That's how these things tend to go.
Yeah, that's fair. I understand. But that was it for that one. We only have one more UFC round to discuss, and that was in your favorite fight of the night, the fight of the night on Dan's card,
Honestly,
Marcin Tybura against Blagoy Ivanov.
I think it was the highest caliber fight.
I'm not saying it
So-
wasn't, but also it was a heavyweight fight that went 3 rounds.
I
and that
know,
makes
and
me angry.
I honestly couldn't believe it. I was like,
It just makes me angry because I mean, look, it was a fine fight. It wasn't. It didn't I don't know, make me mad that I was still watching it or being frustrated that, hey, why are they just grappling against the cage and not doing anything and
Mm.
just doing wrist lock and stuff. No, this was higher level. I will give you that. But nonetheless,
round 2.
heavyweights are supposed to deliver what I got from Sergey Spivak, which was save the day, get it out of here in half a round. And they didn't do that.
And he didn't. But all right.
But anyway, and nonetheless, round 2 of this fight is the only one we're going to be talking about because it is 29-28 twice for Tybura and a 30-27. So you won everything else except round 2 where it was split. What happened in round 2?
This was a good round. Both guys landed pretty well. I think Ivanov was getting the slightly better reaction with his lands, especially with his left hand. It seemed like he was punching through the guard or around it pretty well. Maybe not landing as flush as Tybura was, but I thought he was getting the better, effective reactions there. Tybura had his moments. He attacked the body real good. I think it's a really close round, but I favor Ivanov. Also want to point out poor Junichiro Kamijo was leaning quite far to the right because I don't know if they moved the judge's chair, but he was kind of stuck right behind the pad
Well, that's a good place to
of
be.
the door, which, I mean, this is such an easy fix. Why is this still an issue? So maybe that's the reason. Maybe he didn't see it as well. He was leaning pretty well. I don't want to make any excuses. This was a close round regardless. You can defend the score both ways, but I'm on Ivanov 10-9.
Listen, the judges need to just be lucky that they haven't put ads up that cover all of the cage panels that they're supposed to be watching from. They're lucky they still get chain link fence anymore.
That's true.
Yeah. So just be grateful, judges.
Do you think it could be? No,
What?
I don't even want to get into that. Never mind.
What do you? No. All right, fine. That's fine. Yeah, God, that would be awful if they did what I'm talking about. How terrible would that be if they're like, no, sorry guys, we're gonna put an ad up here. Just watch the screen.
Yeah.
What the? But if anyone would do it, it's the UFC. I wonder if that's legal. I wonder if there are any regulations against. I bet you there's not.
I bet
there's nothing-
they would
I bet
put
there's
something
nothing
in real
restricting
quick.
it.
They would put something in real quick. They'd have to say they would have to be like, listen, we cater to you plenty. We're not doing this.
I would hope
So-
so. I would really hope so.
Yeah.
But I just this is not a sport that surprises me in good ways. It's usually the other way. So hopefully I'd be wrong there. But yeah, so I had it Ivanov as well. I should point out. I thought his hands were working really well in this round. I thought he did some real good work there, and that was pretty much it. But a close round.
Mhm.
So we had it the same as Judge Ben Cartledge, who this is not his first time, if I recall, in Vegas, right?
I think it's
he worked
second.
one last year.
Yeah.
Second, yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I thought. But nonetheless, also a relative newcomer to the Las Vegas fight scene. Not a newcomer to judging. Of course, we've had him on our show before. He's one of the best judges in the whole world. And he was in agreement with his countryman, David Leatherby.
Yeah.
It was Kamijo who saw this for Tybura, like you said. And that is it for that one. But we do have one round from Bellator to go back to for the 10-7 gauge.
Got to gauge our 10-7s.
I like that we can do this. This is fun. I actually have a good time with this. Ali Isaev versus Steve Mowry, 28-28 draw, unanimous draw. We had one of those a few years ago. Cody Durden and Chris Gutierrez had Cody Durden on after that fight to talk about it as well. This is the second time, if I recall, that it's just a 28-28 straight up unanimous draw. and had nothing to do with point deduction. Not in MMA history, but in, let's say, MMA decisions tracked
Mm-hmm.
history, right?
Okay.
And this is the only reason that Mowry didn't just lose this fight was because he went bonkers in round 2.
He did. He did. And almost to Isayev's fault is why it happened.
Yeah,
So,
so set it up.
so round 2, they're on the feet. Isayev lands. I don't even know if he landed. They probably get partially blocked. Spinning heel kick to the ear area. And then after that, he tries a hip toss or a judo throw, ends up falling to the ground and immediately back taken by Mowry. I looked at the clock, it was like 4:36 left in the round. And he's flattening him out and he's just punching the back of his head. Not the back of the head, these are illegal shots, I'm sorry. Punching the side of his head, just letting go. And Herb Dean's telling him, hey, you better fight back. I'm getting close to stopping this here. He fights back. And then, I wish it would be scored at 10-7 normally. There was a couple lulls where Mowry needed to rest, and understandably
Later
so.
in the round, yeah.
But he is in mount or on the back, flattened out for over 4 minutes and 30 seconds of the round. Herb Dean has given Isayev every chance to fight back in the beginning portion of this sequence.
Yeah, a lot of fights get stopped in that position with that argument.
And yeah, I would have no problem if he stopped it. And Mowry sort of lets Isayev off the hook because he attacks an arm triangle after Herb Dean's exact words were, I'm going to stop it. And then he goes, instead of continue to punch and probably does get a stop, he attacks a sub. Doesn't get the sub.
It was a good attack. He doesn't get it, but it is a good attack.
It's a good attack.
I get what you're saying. Like, the logic is you keep punching. I get that.
But. He has to abandon it because he must not have it completely, or he doesn't feel he has it. He goes back into mount. And from here, I just felt the strikes weren't overwhelmingly impactful anymore. I never felt Isayev was in danger of getting finished at this point. He just took a beating, but I never felt uncomfortable watching it or felt it needed to be stopped. So I'm on the 10-8, but I would kind of love for this to be a 10-7.
I think this should be a 10-7, but yeah, I think I'm with you. I think this, like, it kind of walks up to the line of the 10-7, kind of takes a look at it, and it's like, no, especially because of that late, I want to say the last minute-ish or so of the round, he very much peters out. I think if the round ended after 4 minutes, I actually could give it a 10-7.
Possibly, yeah.
I think I really could.
A lot of the steam from the
I
punches.
think the damage is there. I actually think the damage is there. It's on the lower end of it, but I think it's there. And because, again, like, we looked at this fight as like, well, this guy probably could have been stopped, and he's absorbing quite a beat down, even with a lot of the ground punches after that sequence where he was all flattened out, right? You add in the grappling dominance of going for those attacks, and I understand you're not going to get a 10-7 with submission attempts, but I think when you can factor in the other damage, that should at least not count against you.
Well, no,
You're trying to,
I do think he had overwhelming dominance and overwhelming duration.
Right.
I think it's the damage, kind of like you said, peters off.
It does peter off. That's exactly what the problem is. It gets pretty close. I think this would have been much higher on the list of lopsided 10-8s. This was obviously a Bellator round, so we didn't examine those in our 10-7 show earlier this year. But I think it's a big round. It's a round that ought to be included in some measure, I think, of a 10-7, but that's because I like to expand the definition, and it's probably not going to happen.
I'm glad it was unanimous 10-8 because Big John would have blown a gasket if it was.
Oh my God, yes, he would have. Probably, maybe even outside of the broadcast.
Yeah, very possible.
But nonetheless, all three judges came through. They had the right score here. Chris Crail, Elliot Kelly, and we have to give a big shout out here, Dan.
Yeah.
One of our very first supporters of the Couchside Judges,
for sure,
who found this show very early in the process, very early in 2020 during the pandemic, Hadi Muhammad Ali, who, to my knowledge, is working in California for the first time on this card, or at least the first time. It's definitely the first time on a Bellator card.
It's the first time I've noticed. I've seen him I've seen him on Brave before.
Yeah, absolutely. He's Brave. He works in that region of the world a lot. Europe and kind of all over that part of the world. So to see him come on over, and just knowing that he was a big supporter of our show early on, that was super cool. So congratulations, Hadi.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah. But yeah, so I will mark down, because I think it's good that we can kind of like reveal it to each other on this one, because what we do on our little bit of a behind the scenes, guys, we put down our scores on our little outline here so we know how each person thought about the rounds. That way we don't forget to say it or something like that, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe we forget what score we had, right? But because we just kind of did a simple no, yes, no here, is this 10-7 or not? We left it off. We said, okay, let's surprise each other. So, but for housekeeping, we're gonna put down a no. And that is it. Now we can go on to our finishes. Bellator, for all the fights they had, they only had 4 finishes, all by TKO or KO. 2 of them ended in the first round, so a lot of rounds scored, like we said. UFC, a lot more finishes. As we know, there were a few rounds scored. 7 finishes, 3 TKO or KO, 4 submission. You don't see a lot of times where the subs outweigh the TKOs, and 5 ended in the first round. Across 2 events and 11 finishes, what was your favorite, sir?
This was pretty easy. Lorenz Larkin just knocking out, I don't even know if I can say his name right, Muhammad Birhamov with an elbow. Out cold, walk-off elbow KO. I have a feeling we're going to be discussing Ishmael Bonfim and Lorenz Larkin come December for the judgy of Knockout of the Year. Early prediction.
Could be.
This was
I am
sick.
surprised, though, that you went for this because you are always the sub guy.
Yeah, normally. I
mean, it's a great knockout. Like, it's not like you shouldn't pick it, but it's just not the way you tend to go.
I thought Taira had a nice armbar, but this
And that was what I was going to pick, sir.
So, I mean,
Tatsuro Taira, he had an amazing triangle armbar.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was my favorite when I caught up to it, because that actually happened concurrent to Bellator.
Yeah, it did.
So I don't think it's unfortunate how few people were actually watching that fight
I had
live.
them both on at the time.
Yeah, I mean, some people have 2 screens and they were doing that. If I was well, I probably would have done the same thing. But yeah, I mean, I was having enough trouble watching one, so I said, "All right, let's just kind of pare it down right now. I'll catch it later." But yeah, Tatsuro Taira really stood out, and he's an interesting prospect in the sport anyway. So that was a cool finish. He did what he was supposed to do. Ended it in round 1, and great job to him.
Yep.
And now we can look forward to this coming weekend with UFC 284. Now, we had already talked about this is the return after 3 years and change to Australia, almost 3.5 years. We talked about the Aussie judges a few weeks ago in that show. We revisited a bunch of rounds. I think we came away with the understanding that, hey, these judges seem to at least be sharp enough to get on the right side of the equation. The bulk of them in terms of who won the round. There weren't a whole lot of, there was actually one judge we weren't even focusing on that kind of showed up a lot more. Hopefully, maybe Barry Foley, hopefully we don't see his name necessarily. But I think all the other judges that we had kind of looked at, the Evan Fields, Garth Harrimans, Christopher Shen, Albert Shen, all these types, if we see them again, that'd be fine. But maybe rein in the 10-8s. And that's crazy for me to say because I actually I believe in it heavily, but there's so much more out there than anywhere else in the world, the 10-8s, and it just doesn't fit. You just want consistency, And that's it. That's the only thing we're going to talk about for this, right? Not the fights. There's no interesting fights on this.
No, definitely not any interesting fights.
So that was our show. Have a great time. Enjoy watching the judges judge. No, we got a major fight here. Of course, Islam Makhachev defending his belt for the first time against the 145-pound champion, Alexander Volkanovski, who's going for that 55 strap.
This is going to be great. It's going to be so interesting seeing how Volkanovski, works through this fight. Like, how's he solve any problems here?
The line for this fight seems completely out of whack. It's really unbalanced to me. I think Volkanovski is he's like plus 275 or something like that.
Almost a 3-to-1 dog.
Yeah, that's like goofy. Not that we're a betting show, obviously, and I'm not betting this, but man, you're gonna disrespect him like that. Like I understand, favor the champ, but I feel like the odds of Volkanovski winning are significantly better than what the betting odds would imply.
Yeah, you would think so, and then until it happens, like Islam just walks through him, and you're like, oh, all right, I get it now.
Even if he walked through him, I still would feel like, okay, that's one out of it. I wouldn't even feel like that's every time. I feel like if he walked through him over the course of 4 rounds and dragged him through the dirt, you might be able to convince me. But if he just takes him down real quick, round 1 and taps him, it's I don't even know if that proves it enough. It proves he's better. I would accept that. I'm just not. I don't know, man. It just seems like these two are more balanced than you'd think because there's still a lot about Islam's game that just I don't know how well-rounded it's going to be against someone who I view as quite well rounded.
Well, yeah, Volkanovski is very good, very, very good.
And being
Like,
short, he calls him short guy. Being the short guy might not be the worst thing here. He's got a lower center of gravity, a little easier to stand upright and be able to box in the way that he would like to, and kick the way he would like to even.
I'm curious to see. Volkanovski has a great gas tank at 45, 55. That's not going to be an issue at all.
He did say he bulked up
It's
for
really-
this fight in particular, though. Like he bulked up, but he doesn't intend to keep the bulk for other even 55 fights. He just felt he needed it against this guy.
Probably because Makhachev could probably fight at 185.
I think the thing, well, it's probably part of it at least, but I think part of it too is just the nature of the way he's going to fight. Like he's going to try and throw his weight around in such a way and take him down, as opposed to maybe he just hits harder.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very intrigued by it. This is going to be a great fight. I hope.
I like it too. I really, really like this fight. I don't love all the card, but I like this fight. I like the other interim title fight, I should say. Because they're going
stupid.
They're doing the interim title fight for Volkanovski's division because he's not defending here. I think it's stupid, but I also kind of almost agree with it in a weird way, because all you're doing is saying, well, this is a number one contenders fight for the guy who's fighting here already on this card. So it's just like an official stamp on it. I do still think interim title fights are stupid, but I don't know. I guess I'm less mad about it in this one, except for this. Because there's also the other fight that's not taking place on this card between Max Holloway and Arnold Allen.
That I was just about to say that. Like, what do you do there?
But if Max wins, it doesn't matter. Like, he's not good. You wouldn't put him against Volkanovski now.
No, but say Yair beats Josh Emmett. Max has already beaten Yair.
Sure.
Pretty convincingly. Do they fight for that interim title again in the meanwhile?
It was a competitive fight, at least. I'm not saying it wasn't convincing, but it was more competitive than some of the other Max fights.
So, I don't know. I love the matchup. I just don't. Whatever title.
I get
no
it.
title.
No, I get it. Whatever. I know it's one of those things you almost have to like turn your brain off. Like when you're watching like a dumb movie that's just meant to be enjoyed. It's like just shut up. Sometimes you have to do that.
That's how I watch all the Fast and Furious movies, and I love them.
All of them, every single Fast and Furious movie.
Starting from I kind of ignore
when The Rock got it.
When The Rock started coming, I liked them.
Okay,
that's when I started liking them.
No, that's fair. I do like the first one though.
Yeah, first one was good.
First one's good. Second one's third I skipped. 4, and then 5. Yeah, that's when it got really good again.
Yeah.
Or when I say again, it got better than the original. Anyway. But yeah, we already said this is the Aussie judges. There was only one other fight that I had like a strong interest in. I'm not saying the other fights like I couldn't care about, but the only other fight that I was like, ooh, was Jack Della Maddalena and Randy Brown. I like this fight.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Maddalena. Randy Brown was blocking my view at UFC.
He's
Long
a tall
Island.
man. What do you want?
He's a tall man in the front row. Sit down. Come on.
You should have. I'm telling you should have told him.
I'm not going to tell him anything.
Yes, you should have.
Do whatever you want. I want no. I want no smoke.
You are a scared little man.
Yeah.
Fair enough. That's all right.
This
is another fight where I think the odds are out of whack. I forget what they are.
I
was
didn't even
typing
look
them
at
up for work, but I think Maddalena at least. I don't think Randy Brown is a pushover.
No, not at all.
So I would like to see. I think this is actually going to be an interesting fight.
It should be interesting.
So yeah,
also
that's part of why it's another fight of interest to me.
There's really nothing else that's all that interesting.
There's fights.
There's good fights.
Tyson Pedro and Modestas Bukauskas I think is kind of interesting, but like I'm kind of stretching there.
But the thing
this is like a card that like I would tell people like you probably don't need to watch these prelims. Like you could skip them if you didn't feel like doing anything. Like literally just go to a bar at like 11:30 and then watch the two title fights.
Well, the thing we lost Kai Kara France and Alex Perez. They were supposed to fight on this card.
That would have been nice.
And Whitaker and Costa never really came to fruition for this one.
Yeah, that would also have been much nicer too. So it would have been. I think if they had those two fights on the main card, and they also had Jack Della on there as well. I don't know if they would have maybe taken one out and made it the feature prelim, maybe Jack Della. But yeah, that would have been a really terrific main card. But it is what it is.
And then they just
either way, this is an awesome set of title fights. I think.
Oh yeah, the top 3 I think are awesome fights. Then of course they just had to throw in that heavyweight on the main card, Justin Tafa and Parker Porter.
Yes,
just throw it in there.
Yeah,
on the main card. We could put
That's
it
how
elsewhere.
It works.
Yeah.
I'm really interested if Parker Porter is going to earn that rematch eventually against John Jones.
I think John Jones would have to fall far.
I
And at
don't
that
know.
point, he would just walk away.
I don't know. Depends how much money he needs. You never know.
You think
The
John
man
Jones and Parker Porter
has an
would
issue
sell?
of drug issues. You just never know how far a man can fall. I don't root for that. I root for anybody who overcome drug issues, first off. But just saying, people make bad decisions when they're on drugs.
Good
And
point.
John's made a lot of bad decisions in life. Let's face it. We know about a lot of them.
All right, that does it for this episode of the Couchside Judges. We'll be back again on schedule next weekend on Monday to break down UFC in Australia.
Assuming I don't get sick.
Just stay healthy.
I'll do my best. I'm going to tell my kids not to get sick, too.
All right, thanks for listening, everyone.
Take care, everybody.